Greetings, my friends. Welcome back to another delightful episode of the William Arthur Show. I am here with yet again another powerful creative guest, my old dear friend Angela Ryan, and this is a marvelous moment for me. I really appreciate getting to reconnect with people from my past and to collaborate and share and connect and um, offer whatever it is to the people that we feel called to sharing and conversing over. I did this exact same thing with Charlie Glenn. We came back together because I
Yep.
saw what he was doing with Stuart, and I know you've been carving your path in your own creative direction, and I just think it's super powerful to commit to something that lights your heart on fire. And I know what goes into it being on my own journey. So welcome to the show. Very stoked to be here with you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, Angela also goes by the Design Blonde. She's a creative strategist, a consultant, a mentor. I don't know if you would still consider yourself a graphic designer, but I know that's a big part of your journey. Um, Professor, is that
I
was
am a
that
lecturer at
okay? A lecturer.
UW-Milwaukee.
Yeah, that's the word
Yes.
I was looking for. Amazing. So yeah, we graduated from the same class, so we grew up in the same town, went to the same high school, so similar upbringing in that regard, similar friend groups and things along these lines. And recently, Angela came to one of our Slingshot Wellness workshops, so thank you so much, and reverence in terms of supporting us and our mission in that way. And from here, it would be great to dive into, how is it that you describe what you do creatively, the unique magic that you are offering the world currently, this amalgamation of all these different skills, this multifaceted, um, you know, method of sharing with others and serving others that you've been currently offering. I would love to hear in your own words what that is.
Yep. So this has evolved
Here,
over.
actually, let's, sorry to cut you off,
Oh, you're
bring in the
good.
mic.
Well, so this has evolved as a story of what I do over the last year, and I've come to this formula of like a 3x3. So there's three things that I do. I'm a creative strategist, which means a lot of things. A consultant, like you mentioned, and a professional speaker now. And I serve three groups of people, being freelancers, creative entrepreneurs, creative agencies, and corporate teams and their internal marketing teams. So those three groups. And I kind of revolve around three areas or topics within those areas, including business,
Mm-hmm.
branding, and marketing. So there's a lot in that, but that's kind of I can flex a lot of muscles in a lot of different places.
Mm-hmm.
So more recently, I've been focusing on the freelancer business consulting side of things. So my path to get to where I'm at was not an easy one. There's not really like a freelance 101 that existed back in college when I started. And so I now want to be that resource or that mentor that I never had to just teach people how to freelance on their own.
I resonate. It can be very easy to be misguided, and it can be challenging to find the right people to lead us in the direction that we're looking to go. And wow, it's mind-blowing how much time and energy you can save when you invest your resources and energy into a mentor that has walked a similar path that you're looking to take as well. I would be curious to hear, what is it most that lights you up about this work? What would you say the primary why for doing this work, and offering this sort of service to others is for you?
Oh, I think for me, it's the transformation. So I've always, no matter what I've done in every walk of life, just wanted to help people kind of figure themselves out, figure out what they want to do. And so for me to be able to give people like their light bulb moment is just so gratifying for me.
connect the dots.
Yep.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I know. So seems like I don't know much about your story, and I love hearing, the path in which entrepreneurs, creatives, artists, wellness practitioners, and so on, what it is that path is that has led them to this point. Because obviously there's, so many ups and downs, and there's so many different ways in which we can engage with the work, in terms of like if it's serving us or if it's not, and we can find ourselves doing, one step forward, two steps back type of thing. And there's always like a really interesting story behind, people that are successful in their craft and what they do. And it's very valuable for people to, hear the story arch of what it is that, people like you and I have been through to get to where we are. And I know a key component of your story, at least from what I can tell, just briefly looking at your website and some conversation we had, was the workaholism paradigm. And I feel like this is something a lot of people commonly fall into, considering there's so much media out there and there's so much conversation around like grind culture and like hustle 24/7 and, basically sacrifice yourself for your work. And ultimately this being a relationship with your work that creates disharmony and negates from your health and things along these lines. And, me personally, I fell into something similar, and I made a lot of progress very fast in what I did in terms of developing my skills as a jewelry artisan and things like this. But essentially every other bucket of my life, relationships, connection to myself, mental health, emotional health, physical health, things like this, all those things started to really fall to the wayside. And basically I became really unhappy, although like I was going after this thing that society had deemed what would make me a successful person, like fully. And it was great to fully commit to this craft and pour myself into it in this way. But it definitely fell into the realm of like a disordered relationship with my work. And I was completely imbalanced in terms of myself and my relationship with life, and creating that balance of, work life and things along these lines. And yeah, it just seems like it's a common story and experience that's perpetuated in society. So I would love to hear your journey with all that, and whatever else comes to mind, whatever else is present with you with all that being said.
Yeah, so first off, thank you for sharing all of that. I don't know how much you've actually talked about that journey and that self-awareness,
A
but
little bit, yeah, a little bit.
it took me a long time to get there. So, and I remember the first time I started talking about this, it was really hard for me. So, bear with me. This will be a long story,
Yeah,
but
what's most personal is most universal. So it's so powerful to just share from the heart and share authentically, because a lot of the times we find ourselves in circles where we're really just living on the surface, and that becomes the norm. And we need to, express what it is our experiences are so we can like collectively grow together, I feel.
yeah, so my story starts way back before work was even like a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get there, I want to get to the point where I started becoming aware of what was happening. So about 3 years ago, give or take, I was at my first full-time job out of college. I was successful, award-winning designer, graphic designer, and art director at an advertising agency, and was, very much in a place where I felt like I finally had like done it, kind of thing. And so I was feeling very successful, and I was with a team that I really liked working with. And something happened that I everything kind of crumbled. So it was very much a slow burn of getting into the workaholic cycle. I didn't know what workaholism was at the time. And so what happened was some of my coworkers ended up leaving. very different circumstances. And I took on a lot of work at the time. And so I pretty much just poured my entire life into work.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to a point where it broke me. So there was probably a week, 2 to 3 weeks actually, where it was a constant cycle of like, I'd be up at 5 a.m., working till 2 a.m.
Damn. That's a marathon.
Not
I've ever.
not every day, but I mean,
Yeah.
it was consistent enough that it became a
Yeah.
problem. And
Yeah.
so, a lot of this too, like I didn't share at the time. Like my bosses didn't entirely know what was going on. I mean, they knew that I was working a lot. They'd see emails, after hours, things like that, but
Mm-hmm.
they didn't really know the severity of what was happening. And so, it got to a point where it took a toll on my physical health. Like I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
eating, like it was not good.
Yep.
So then, ended up deciding to go into therapy shortly after that. And that was the first step of many that, brought me out of a really dark place. And
Mm-hmm.
so, found out through therapy that I had a lot of unresolved trauma from my entire life. And realizing that most of my work relationships and personal relationships were severely codependent.
Mm-hmm.
That was a word I also didn't know until I went into therapy and she explained it. There's one book that I got out of therapy that I recommend everyone should read. Honestly, it's a life book, in my opinion, called Codependent No More.
Mm-hmm.
Really opened my eyes to what was actually happening in my life. And so I'll just give kind of one big blanket trigger warning here for anyone who's listening or watching. But realizing through therapy that I have been exposed to a lot of things that contribute to codependency. Like if I had a bingo card, probably won bingo a couple times.
Yeah.
But I mean, lots of alcoholism, SA, for those that don't know what SA means, sexual assault, suicide. I had lots of friends and family that either attempted or followed through with ending their life. And so through all of that, which all happened prior to college. So through my childhood, through middle school, through high school, that was a really tough time that I didn't even realize was tough until the last 3 years. And so for that pivotal moment to come to light, and then my therapist being like, oh, you dive into work because it's your control space,
Mm-hmm.
was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Being the only thing that I actually could get something positive out of at the time and have full control over. So just gonna take a deep breath there because that was a lot. But yeah, so that's kind of where everything started. Since then, my therapist said I've graduated from therapy. So I don't continually go anymore, but I have thought about going back just because it is something that I find very fruitful and helpful.
Yeah.
Talk therapy for anyone who's considering, like, just try it.
Yeah.
It was really great for me to work through not only those personal issues, but current issues I was dealing with, just to have somebody who is also not involved in my life to talk to.
That's huge because, yeah, you can go to your friends for advice and for support and for space holding all you want, but they are biased because they are your friends. So they may try to emotionally coddle you instead of giving you the real truth, and their own emotionality and their emotional experience in relativity to yours can get in the way of actually helping you regulate. It could actually create more dysregulation. And yeah, therapists, and that's a very valuable tool for finding the truth of your situation and the clarity, and someone that it has the training to do so. And that's, a deep rabbit hole, but I agree with you in terms of it, and the process of healing and self-awareness and learning the tools of self-regulation. It's a never ending journey, and I know a lot of people that have resorted to mental health consultation through therapy that have found a lot of benefit through it, and it's just one of the many tools we can use to create that clarity and find that support, that unconditional support from someone who is a professional and isn't going to be in the mix of like your life directly, and is looking at it from the outside and isn't attached to your experience.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, just attending other things like your workshop was really a great mental space for me as well. So things like that, just I started to do things I wouldn't normally do in terms of how I handled my mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So I really put that at a priority. And so shortly after that, if I'm thinking in terms of the timeline, like a year and a half ago, so about October of 21, or in 23.
Yeah.
That's kind of when all this went down. And then I spent the next 6 months really focusing on my mental health. I, a year ago, left my job at the agency, and just really started to focus on how to fix myself. Well, not fix myself, but like learn to love the person that I am because of my experiences.
There was some unwinding to do, which I
Yes.
can directly relate to. It's just for most of us, we're not given the tools. We're not taught how to take a look at our lives and to self-reflect and how to self-regulate and how to express and be with our emotions. So for me, the work was also an avoidance tactic to a certain degree to like deeper underlying issues of insecurity. Me thinking that once I become successful in this craft and become the best, that's when I can have the love. That's when I'll receive the love. That's when I'll experience the love. When really that's just you outsourcing your power, and the only place you can find love is within yourself, and that's the only place that it can be found sustainably. And of course, being successful is important, and proving to yourself that you can achieve something and carry something out, and that has its own benefits on the nervous system itself. But yeah, I can really relate to your experience in terms of the mental health issues. And I was also, you said you were dealing with some alcoholism personally. Yep, I was, I mean, this started even before I got addicted to work in a sort of way, and used it as a method of like, yeah, essentially avoidance. I was experiencing issues with substance abuse as well, with cannabis, alcohol, other drugs, and just adding fuel on the fire of just like not feeling well and taking myself further and further away from myself. And these were things I just all turned to because I didn't know like what to do. That was just like the path of least resistance and what provided the relief I needed. So yeah, there was a ton of unwinding and self-reflection that needed to be done. And like some of those things still, there's still things I'm working through, interestingly enough. So it's like shit goes deep, and yeah, I can just relate to a lot of your personal experience with that.
Yeah. And just to clarify a little bit, I wasn't in the hot seat of, dealing with different substances and alcohol. There were a lot of people around me and in my life that were very alcoholic in a very detrimental way. I had been involved in situations where I get calls in the middle of the night, and friends that have just needed me to be there, which contributed, I think, a lot to the codependent relationships and having that anxiety of like wanting to make sure other people are okay. My parents, bless their souls, they're some of the greatest people in my life. They were entrepreneurs themselves, but in a bar and restaurant scene. So for me to reflect on my experiences as a young person in a bar environment, looking back, realizing like how messed up some of those things are now as an adult. But just a lot of my codependent tendencies have come from just not wanting people to die. I mean, flat out, like, it sounds really dramatic, but that was what it was. That's what I was living every day.
Yeah, so it was just it was hard for you to like fully embrace the truth and reality of that. Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, it's like that you love people so deeply, and like the idea of someone, something happening, like the immense grief and pain and suffering that comes with that. Like, I mean, we can all relate to not wanting to be with that. That's
Right.
that's a huge weight to bear.
When I think just my view of people being so much grander than they view themselves. Like I mean, you yourself, you're such a beautiful person, but like I can't make you think that if you don't think that. And so I think that was a really difficult turning point for me in assessing my relationships. Is just
Hmm.
I can't fix people. People have to fix themselves.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true. They have to come to their own realizations. You can be there to support, but it can, like you're saying, it can fall into this codependent relationship where they're completely relying on you to like offload, whatever negative experiences they're having without actually taking any real action to
right,
resolve the things
right.
they're going through.
Yeah, I joke around that I'm the group mom and the group therapist,
Yep.
which, I mean, don't get me wrong, I align with those. Like, I very much care deeply for other people, and
Yeah.
just, it was a very tough lesson for me to learn that, like, I can't help people help
And
themselves.
what you're truly doing when you set the boundary of like, I'm not going to continue to be this person that you lean on nonstop, is you're eradicating that codependent relationship and giving them true love. True love is like unconditional. Like, I want what is actually best for you. And if
Mm-hmm.
that means some discomfort in the moment because I'm setting this boundary, I'm going to do that because that's how you're actually going to grow, like through that tough love, which is, yeah, that's a challenging thing to do. And that's an art form. That's an art form to be
Oh,
able to
yeah.
do that and like maintain your sphere while it's happening, and yeah, stay with that.
Yeah, I still, to this day, struggle with that, and I think I view myself as the trigger friend.
Yeah, like you said, you're a you're a recovering people pleaser, as we all are,
Oh,
because that's
yeah.
just like, it's like we're conflict stinks. Conflict stinks. We
Mm-hmm.
want to, like, I'm a conflict. I experience conflict avoidance. I want to identify with that, but that's something that was programmed into me from a very young age. Never having been given the tools to navigate conflict in a healthy way. And as I have become an adult, it's like this is just an inherent part of life, is learning to navigate disagreements in a healthy way and learning to use your communication to do so. And that the only real resolution that can happen is through, fully facing that and doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the best things about working at the agency I did is my superiors really believed in like conflict resolution, and they had hired an accountable teams coach. And so I got some of that training formally, which was really helpful for me coming out of, the bomb that was dropped on my life of what was happening. But a lot of people don't actually know how to have that communication. Also, one of the big phrases that I use a lot is comprehension is key, not communication, because you can communicate all you want, but unless the other person can see your side or understand what you're saying, even if they don't agree, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
learning how to communicate effectively, but also how to understand
Mm-hmm.
and assess
Mm-hmm.
is also super important.
True that.
But
So I forget where we were at in your journey of, things were not going well for you. You hit rock bottom in a sort of way where there's lots of chaos, lots of, just the nature of what you're experiencing was hectic, and you weren't feeling the best. And we're at this point, what happens next, and how do you, you said you went to therapy and you started your healing process. After you gain these new awarenesses, what does the process look like of starting to implement these things, starting to have a healthy relationship with your work and everything else around you?
well, the first step was I quit my
Like,
job.
bounce.
And I mean, I was very honest with them when I left. They knew everything that I was going through, and just I needed to give myself the time and the space to figure out what I needed to do. I had already started the design blend at the time, but like I didn't have a fully formulated idea of what I needed it to be. So I began freelancing right away. It's something just under that name. I have been freelancing for years, but full-time freelancing was kind of my first step. And, got a couple gigs right away. Of course, you have to make a living. So
Yeah.
it was the natural next step. From there, I kind of figured out, started seeing patterns of consistent working habits for me and the partners that I was working with. Because I've worked now as a freelancer with a number of agencies as well. So seeing the different tendencies that happen between all the agencies and the industry as a whole, but we'll get to that topic in a little bit. But just noticing my own patterns and behaviors and how to stop them through freelancing. Because I was now in control of my schedule and who I work with and when I work with, which it really was a big reason of why I left. Is just to have all that control and the control over the projects I was working on. The thing I didn't account for all the time was that I had to do everything.
Yeah, that's stressful, and that requires a lot of energy. And then there's more boundaries to be drawn in terms of it becomes harder to draw the line of being in your life and cultivating your relationships and doing other things you love, and then creating this passion project of like, this is my freedom, this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm going to help others. So yeah, it can become entangled. It can, like you were saying, that codependent dynamic, and it's like, yeah, it's really hard to figure out a process and tendencies and an approach to navigate it in a healthy way where you feel good and you're filling all the different buckets of what it means to be a happy, healthy, and whole person in harmony, just with your experience.
Yeah, and I think I came to learn early on just how long it actually takes you to get out of burnout, which the average I've heard is 3 to 5 years, which is a really long time. And so I came in with the mindset of like, okay, this is going to be an ongoing thing. I'm going to have to figure out how to do both. And as we talk about the difficulties or the almost hesitancy to go into freelancing of having to do it all, that's kind of where the light bulb started for me to wanting to work with other freelancers, because I was like, it doesn't actually have to be as hard as it seems. Of course, I hesitated on it for a long time, and just kind of that part became really stressful in my business, is like the operational side, the client management side, and whatever. I was really passionate about that side because I'm very natural, just a teacher of the things that I know. So to be able to teach my clients who maybe have never worked with a freelancer before how to work with a freelancer was something I was like, oh yeah, this is really like, I love this gratification of like teaching somebody that freelance exists and it could be just as rewarding as, hiring a bigger company to do it, but also much more approachable and within reach for smaller companies. So started off after working with a couple agencies, working with more nonprofits and mom and pop shop kind of things.
Cool.
Just helping them with standard stuff like creating a logo, making their website, giving them a Facebook page, whatever they needed. And so I was kind of going down that path at first, focusing on niching down the actual freelance services I was offering. But then alongside that, also building this like, oh, I want to teach other people how to do their own business. Because I've seen really good success from it. And I feel much better as a person. Like everyone could do this if they wanted to. And I think where I'm at now is I've learned a lot of things over the last year, continuing to freelance in a number of areas. And so now I'm in a space where I'm doing mostly just marketing consulting, not so much execution work, and almost bringing the worlds together, because there's a lot of overlap that I think people don't realize, especially this. I don't know why there's such a rift between freelancers and agencies, but like they work with each other still. There's just some weird stigma that I still don't quite understand. But really, it's my view of it is it can be very symbiotic. The way I run my business is if I have certain projects that I maybe don't specialize in the services or the talents that are needed, I have people I go to and just contract them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very much how agencies hire people out when they need help, but that's where I'm kind of at now, is like melding all of my worlds together into one thing that I can now deliver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow.
I know it's really complex, but
Yeah, a lot. Like I'm like some of the terminology. I'm like I don't fully understand, but that's okay. That's okay. Well, that's such a way to pay attention in terms of like you're at this point with your work where like it's not working and things are not flowing and things do not feel good and you're experiencing this darkness and lots of disharmony and like we were saying before, chaos, and it can be very easy to continue to push away and stay comfortable where you're at when in reality you're really just adding to like the pile of um basically being in like a disease state. And that's something I think a lot of us experience is like we know something's wrong and we feel something is out of alignment, yet we don't really know where to start or like what it is exactly is happening within us, within our experience, and to take steps forward to start to resolve it. So I want to recognize that, just like seeing that things aren't going smoothly and then taking steps forward and inquiring within and getting honest with yourself about where you're at, recognizing it's not going to lead to anywhere you want to go. That's tough to do. It's tough to like have that self honesty and zoom out and really take a look at your situation and start to like unravel the experience and get the professional help or whatever help it is that one needs to start to clear things up and get on a path that feels good and find that balance in all the different ways. And it's interesting because yeah, we face these quote unquote negative experiences, but ultimately like they're the most enlightening things we can go through in terms of, because the awareness is hard to avoid when there's so many things that feel uncomfortable happening at a single time. So do you help a lot of people with recognizing where they may be falling into a disordered relationship with their work? Is that a small aspect of what you do, or?
I think there's some crossover. It's not something that I like focus on.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the work that I do and a lot of the clients that I work with, most of the typical conversations come to overcoming imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And, as somebody who struggles with that as well, it's very much an ongoing and probably forever will be an ongoing
Mm-hmm.
thing. It's very common with people who are in codependent relationships. It's just something, again, that I have to live with and work through every single day. It's an ongoing battle. But I've learned better ways to deal with it. And so working with other people, and now especially students at my job at the university, like to be able to give them the space to just come talk to me and have a conversation about they're not sure about this. They don't know, what their future holds.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is this even an option for me to get a job? A lot of the similar questions that I had experienced that, I got half answers to from certain people, but just, I never had somebody who just like didn't sugarcoat it for me. And going back to you talking about self-awareness and all the work that I have done myself, and I'm sure you have done as well, I just want to, discuss too that it isn't all just me, but it started with me. So I was very cognizant of the people I was surrounding myself with as well. And a lot of those people that were also a support system for me and vice versa. But then also just looking at, one of my methods, I guess, that is a little more negative of me dealing with when I'm falling into a cycle is I tend to self-isolate.
That's what I do too.
And I know at that point that I'm like, oh, I need to go do something.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the move. It's like break that pattern, and the more that you can do that, the less you're bolstering this like codependent relationship, or this addictive tendency rather, or
Mm-hmm.
this tendency that is supporting your complacency and where you're at and where you're resonating at as a human. I can relate to, like, that's my comfort zone, is like being alone, and that's where I was primarily as I was, cultivating my craft in jewelry art. Was like, it was just me in my studio in my mom's basement, just like going all in with that. And I got really comfortable with being alone, and my social muscle started to atrophy, and I wasn't getting that key nutrient of connection. And I still
Mm-hmm.
want to do that. Like, even today, I just woke up this the past week, just haven't been feeling the best. And all I've been really wanting to do is like pretty much nothing, and
Yeah.
be alone. And I know that that's not going to do anything in terms of getting me out of like the rut I'm experiencing and shifting my momentum. So yeah, I can relate to the self isolating variable as a coping mechanism. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a challenging thing to navigate, and I'm sure many people experience something similar.
Yeah, there's speaking of doing nothing, there's a class that I think is being offered at UWM now, as well as some other area schools, that's called The Art of Doing Nothing. And it's really about not actually doing nothing, but like how to spend your void time into more constructive things that,
Hmm.
we have to push ourselves out of.
Yeah, right.
So I also think that's really interesting way of dealing with my coping mechanisms, is like what I choose to do when I start to self-isolate. But yeah, I think the awareness of not only that, but I think sometimes I'm addicted to my own misery.
Yeah. Yeah, because your nervous system's familiar with it. It's like become
Mm-hmm.
programmed to resonate there. So there's like unconscious mechanisms pushing you to bring you back down to being in that place. So that makes sense.
Yeah, but now learning to be comfortable with being happy and
Hmm.
like being able to like pat myself on the back for things, like that was a weird thing for a while where I was like very fearful of my own success. And so now I've like pushed past that, and I've really started to give myself grace with different steps of comfortability.
Hmm.
Just learning to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's has really been very rewarding.
What have been some of your, do you have specific methods of incorporating that into your life? Because that's something I'm a huge fan of too. Purely, mainly from a physical standpoint, doing, cold exposure, doing sauna, vigorous workouts, and then from a social standpoint too, and just doing things that I know are super beneficial for me, and throwing myself into the mix of like unfamiliarity and into the uncertainty, and watching how I evolve and like how I feel about myself. And I think there's just something hardwired into us that really rewards us when we really fully embrace some sort of pattern interrupt experience, and embracing discomfort as a method of adapting and evolving. Because I feel ultimately that's what humans are designed to do, and that's what we've been doing, overcoming hardship, and then adapting via that, and becoming um, more what's the word I'm looking for? Drawing a blank here. Just more capable individuals.
Right.
Yeah.
I think for me it was just not thinking and doing.
Yes, the
Cuz
mind can
yeah.
be a nuisance. And I love, that's like such an art form and a practice, is learning how to override just basically the like onslaught of thoughts that will prevent you from doing something you're uncomfortable with, because it's just the ego wanting to maintain itself, and it feels threatened when
Mhm.
you put yourself in a situation where like you may be exposed to new stimuli, or like it's possible that you'll get embarrassed, or a new physical thing too, which like the ego just doesn't like discomfort, and you can like kind of expand your ability to lean into that. And a lot of life is doing just that, is just like overriding those thoughts and then doing the thing, and then you recognize how rewarding it is. So like expanding your capacity to do that.
Mhm. Yeah, it's signing up for things I wouldn't normally sign up for, like just going and putting myself out there. I think it it came down more to practice than a method, which still continually doing,
Yep.
attending your workshop for the first time. I didn't
Yeah.
know, I knew half of those people, but,
Right.
meeting some new people and doing something that's out of the ordinary. I attend a lot of events, especially within my own industry. So like, I'm very comfortable in sort of that extroverted
Yep.
area of life. But I'm very much an overthinker. So being able to just like shut it off and go do something.
Yeah. It's challenging. And it's interesting because following that and recognizing like this is the thing that's going to lead me in the direction of like my greatest and grandest life and lifestyle and new relationships and stuff like that. That's so key. It's so key, and it's easy to conceptualize, but to do it and to practice that is so much harder because you're continually putting yourself in a place where you're going to feel out of your element, and there's plenty of emotional sensations that come with that aren't the most pleasant to experience, and your nervous system becomes upregulated and things like that. And it's amazing how much more robust we can become, and what we can truly accomplish, and what it is we can bring into our lives via that concept alone of just embracing the fact that like doing epic things is going to require an element of discomfort, and learning to override the just the mentality of and the thoughts that want to hold you back from doing that it's a huge thing for sure.
Oh yeah, and then being codependent on top of it, like learning to trust people again. People I didn't know. I think I always had a fear of like being taken advantage of again. Which isn't true. I mean, that was just my brain trying to protect myself from doing things that it was just an unrealistic thing. But then to like go and do the thing and then leave feeling like, oh my God, I did the thing.
Yeah, you've done a lot of that. I mean, you're getting up in front of groups of people and presenting, and I feel that there's an interesting statistic out there showing like, a vast majority of people, that's like their number one fear in terms of
public speaking.
Yeah, public speaking. And that was a huge hurdle for me to overcome, and still overcoming and still adapting to and getting comfortable with, is just learning how to express myself as myself, even on a podcast here, or obviously with the workshops and speaking in front of groups of people. And it's wild to like slowly move into that role and feel good doing it, and being someone that was in high school and like totally would lose their breath and get really rosy cheeks in front of it. And it was just like I dreaded it. I was like, I hate this. I never want to do this. And I don't know what that is. That's interesting that gets ingrained in us, that like you're not safe getting up in front of this group of people. So yeah, it's cool to like recognize the level at which you've put yourself out there and navigated that process of getting comfortable in front of groups of people. And I bet there's tons of like side effects, side benefits that have come with that, like feeling confident in your own skin and your relationships, and just being able to express to a new degree and create to a new degree, and that amazing effect of momentum that comes with just continuing to build and step into that.
Yeah, it reminds me of a couple of years ago, the first like real big in-person workshop that I did was for a group of students and young professionals about just the key to confidence, essentially. And so it was a whole retreat for a weekend, and I came to it with how to instill confidence through action, so like just doing stuff. And the whole thing was about self-project management. Like, because, I mean, studies show that being able to check things off of your to-do list make you more confident. That's just something that they've realized happens, even little things. So like, some of the things I talk about in that workshop that I can share with everybody who's listening is just limiting yourself to 3 things a day. Make it a small checklist. Your brain's not capable of handling more than that. And so when you put an endless to-do list together, you're in a sense failing.
Yeah.
And so you're tricking yourself into thinking you can't do stuff. Instead, you should be focusing on, okay, here's the absolute things that I need to get done today, which, it does not mean write a book.
Mm.
It means start the first chapter,
Yeah.
Write one page.
Yeah.
Or
small actionable steps that you can
yes.
achieve. And then it's interesting starting to do that. Like, I'm someone that's very structured in the way I approach my days and utilizing, to-do lists and stuff like that. I've fallen on both sides where like I overpack it and I put all these different things and I don't, achieve and tick off all the boxes. Then there's something happening on an unconscious level where I feel like I don't feel accomplished. And that's like a blow to me feeling good about my experience. And there's so many other stories that manifest from that, feeling incapable, like, oh, I'm not getting anywhere, I'm just spinning my tires in place. And then on the other side of that, it's amazing what happens when, like, yeah, you keep it reasonable. And I've come to the point where, like, if I don't finish all the boxes, it's like, whatever. I have these like 3 main ones, like you were saying, and carrying out those tasks, executing on them, and like feeling into, I did this thing, and then neurons that fire together wire together, so your brain's making a connection there, and you're getting that momentum, which is very helpful. And yeah, it's like a very basic thing, at the same time super effective in terms of like proving to yourself that you can carry out what you set out to do, essentially.
Yeah, and then there's things you can add on to that based on how you function or how you learn and things like that, like reward systems. So once you get something done, you stack it with a reward.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good cycle to help you to continue to do things. Like, a lot of people put it with not as healthy things, like, oh,
Yeah.
if I finish this, then I can go get my Starbucks. And
yeah, or drink a cocktail or,
right.
or eat a piece of cake or what, and that's good too. But if it's like a continuous, if that's a habit that you create for yourself, that yeah, there's a balance, and everyone's different, of course.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, it was really cool for me to be able to give that talk, and then through that talk, one of the questions came up about, oh, you seem really confident. How do you do it? My response was, if anybody tells you they're confident 100% of the time, they're full of it.
Yeah.
Like, even celebrities. We were talking about some of the celebrity news that's happening as of late, but like, I guarantee you, those people, like singers, actors, whatever, they still get nervous. They still are not confident 100% of the time.
Otherwise, they're probably sick.
Yeah.
They're something's not functioning properly. There's a screw loose or something. It's inherent in the human experience that we'll face just feeling that nervousness, especially when you're stepping into new things and trying new things and putting yourself out there and taking risks and taking those big leaps forward. That's totally natural till the day that you die. Of course, like, you start to develop confidence in specific areas, you get more comfortable with it, but it's actually a wonderful sign that you experience that, because that means you're growing and you're learning and you're doing new things.
Yeah, and I mean, biologically, it's fight or flight. Like, you are wired as a person to be nervous. It's a new thing. You've never experienced it. Your body is like, okay, we'll see.
Yeah.
But then once your body realizes it's safe, you can then, get comfortable and continue to do it. Again, it comes with practice. But I think for me to be able to say that out loud was a self-awareness that, like, I could be confident in moving forward in my own path, that, like, realizing that from who I had learned from, and that I was telling the same learnings to this audience, that not everybody is confident, that, like, I could pave my own way without feeling that hesitancy, and that just to be comfortable in it. Like, it was something I was going to have to live with, so just do it. Like, why waste the time or procrastinate on it?
Yeah. What's the experience like now? I mean, obviously you're developing in all these new ways, continuing to do the public speaking. Is it something that you feel pretty solid in terms of, like, your emotional experience leading up to it? Is there always, like, a little bit of pre-jitteriness going into it? Yeah, of course. That's good.
I think with everybody.
Yeah. There's certain neurotransmitters that are being released to create more mental acuity and more alertness. So it can be nice to like reframe it as like, oh, this my body's helping me in a certain way, and it's helping me to be optimized for this talk or this presentation that I'm about to do. And it means you care because you want to provide something of value to whoever it is you're presenting to and working with. And so yeah, it can be a beneficial thing as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that started with client presentations. I mean, I've been doing them forever, and I mean forever since I started working.
Yeah.
But like that's kind of where the public speaking first, like the nervousness started, but then also the realizing I was really good at it. And I'm very much an in-person, like bouncing off of other people's energy and like talking through, of course, things I'm knowledgeable in, but also having candid conversations with other people about what they're knowledgeable in. And so started with client presentations, but now that I'm in a public speaking sphere, it's a little bit different prep, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like when I'm approaching a client meeting, it's very buttoned up. Like I have my presentation in order, it's storytelling arc and everything. Because storytelling is an important part of marketing. But it was like an up until the presentation thing. Now with public speaking, I get into cycles of overthinking sometimes up until, so I have to literally just like almost set a timer or like a time limit on when I have to stop thinking about it X amount of hours before. And so, in order to do that, it's typically blasting my emo playlist.
There you go. I saw that on one of your recent posts talking about you were. That was fun. That was cool.
So like just for me, music is very therapeutic for me in multiple ways.
Brings you to presence, brings you into your body and out of your mind, which usually never shuts up and is always producing thoughts, because that's what the brain and the mind does.
Yeah, so being able to just turn that on and like not think about what I'm gonna do.
Shift the energy. So that's cool. There's something to be said about like finding methods that work in terms of shifting your energy and allow you to drop into a specific state and be present. And music has been very therapeutic for me as well, in terms of bringing me into the moment and eliciting certain emotions and implementing it into my process of being human in different ways. I would love to discuss more about the process of building confidence, and I'm sure there's some things that maybe don't go so smoothly sometimes, and
of course not.
And it can be hard to not attach to that as something that defines where you're at in your craft. So like there's this interesting self-awareness process that we all go through with doing things like this. And what are some of the practical methods you've implemented into your own life? I know you talked about taking action to continue to develop this confidence. Can you elaborate on that more?
Yeah. So again, that kind of comes back to really just like the to-do list, but also realizing that the to-do list never ends, which turned into what I teach now is more about methods of prioritization in all aspects. So not just focusing on everything so segmentedly. You know, you have to-do lists in life, you have to-do lists in work, you have to-do lists in health. Like it's finding a way to make it work more like an ecosystem. And so in terms of building confidence, it's very much a stairway and not a jump. It's like anything that requires, you know, mindset changes and things like that. There's, you are the only one in control of how much you can take and understanding your comfortability levels, but also realizing that there are different avenues that you can go in terms of finding your confidence. For me, it was very much establishing my to-do list. So now, for me personally, as a serial entrepreneur, I have a serial entrepreneur schedule that I abide by. And that is like my boundary. It's my segmented times for me to focus on different areas of work because I have a lot of things going on. But then also incorporating my life things into there as well. Because without the work and the life working together, I can't even focus on the confidence portion of it. I have to be in the right mental state for me to even work on that. And then once I'm in that balanced state, it's again, like trying new things. So I had gone to like a business owners workshop about a year ago, where it was mainly just a networking event kind of thing. And so there was some lecture portions, and then you got up and you had to talk to like 5 new people, which of course I was very uncomfortable. I didn't really know my story at the time. I was still working through all of my post job, stress with work, making money, surviving, things like that. So I went to this event, and I ended up meeting new clients, which was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I can do this. It really is a method of just doing things in different levels of comfortability. So like that was kind of a big thing. Then fast forward to doing workshops in public speaking. Like, I had just offered to do a couple events for free and was like, hey, my topics kind of align with yours. You kind of look like you need a speaker. Happy to talk on this topic. Happy to do it for free. Just, I'd love the experience.
Yep.
And so that was an easy way for me. There was less pressure because it was something that I was just volunteering to doing. And from there, I now do it as a part of my job. So
there you go. Getting the reps in.
Definitely that cadence of like small stuff to big stuff. And that's in like every aspect of my life. It's very much a project management mindset, which seems really type A analytical brain, but like it's immensely helped my creative brain be able to function better. Is when my life project and task wise is in order, I can be more creative. Which then again ties into like what I want to do with freelancers, is help them figure out the back end of their business, build more confidence in the work that they're doing, own their craft, things like that. So definitely bite size to bigger jumping off points.
Yeah. Very wise. Very wise. Yeah.
Through
That's
personal
cool.
experience.
Exactly. So. That's the only place you can truly speak wisdom from, is like walking the walk and doing the things. And what has mentorship looked like for you up to this point? What is self-investment in terms of, learning the new skills? And I'm sure you've invested in your own coaches potentially.
Oh yeah. I mean, it ranges. I typically go on an as needs basis. Some people prefer to have somebody there all the time. I also serve as an accountability for some people and vice versa. So really symbiotic relationships. I'm very selective with who I talk to, but I'm of course open to a number of opinions and then using that set of data to create my own opinions about things. But I mean, I attend workshops and things for my own benefit. I just did a 3-day business workshop about defining success and aligning your business strategy to your personal definition of success. That's with Ray Nine and Kylie Peters. For anybody who's interested, she's hosting more this year. Really great for me as a business owner. And as somebody who also teaches that stuff, it's important that I continue to learn. I don't think learning ever stops. And that's something I feel very passionate about in my own career and my own life, is that I'll never stop learning. Things are always changing. So, I think just a range of experiences in terms of how I attain those mentorships or those areas for information. I also read a lot now. I used to not read like at all.
Yeah, I'm so inconsistent with my reading practice, or I experience inconsistency with it. At the beginning of the year, I was like, I'm going to read a book every month.
Yep.
That was just too much.
Same.
I read one book, I did it, whatever. And then I've explored outside of, what I thought was a solid reading strategy, which was like reading every single damn page of the book from cover to cover, which provides its benefit and value. But at this point, it's like keeping it loose and dedicating myself to like 2 days a week of reading, or just reading when I feel inspired, keeping a book on me and not feeling obligated to read it from cover to cover to obtain value from it. And that the most important part for me is when I see something of value, how can I implement that right away into my life? Because if I'm just like letting it linger in my mind as thoughts and information, it doesn't really add any value to my life, and it's just me like basically consuming content as
Totally.
entertainment and not something as like a tool that's going to benefit me and improve my life and my lifestyle and things like that. So yeah, the implementation variable in terms of reading.
Yeah, and for me, it was realizing that I'm a terrible, like, just quiet reader. I have to also have the Audible version
Mhm.
on. So,
Oh,
like,
I like that
I,
method too. I haven't. I have. Yeah. I read or I saw somewhere somebody mentioned having the Audible and then reading along in the book.
yep.
Because I'm not a huge fan of like reading straight from the book myself, and it's I just find challenge in comprehending
Mm-hmm.
and really like intaking information in a way that I understand it. And obviously, like some books, it's just like there's levels in terms of communication and how people relay concepts, and some things are really dense and it takes a while to wrap your head around. But that's a method I heard about that I was like, that makes a lot of sense, and
Yeah.
that's dope.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's I mean, being an overthinker, I drift when I read. So, like, being
Yeah.
able to, like, focus all of
So
my
many moving
senses.
parts.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, that's been really helpful too. I've really come to enjoy reading. I think I
Hmm.
was just so adverse to it prior because I couldn't focus on it.
Yep.
But yeah, reading's great.
Yeah, and yeah, thanks for sharing your process on what like your journey with furthering your education and continuing to sharpen the sword of your skills and mentorship and things along these lines. I think that's a really important point to hit on. And a lot of people are like, why would I ever need a coach? You know, like I can go on Google or
Even coaches need
whatever.
coaches.
Exactly. Coaches out of anyone should have coaches. If they're
Yep.
leading people, they should be working with someone that is a little further along or more developed in whatever it is they're seeking guidance on. And I remember growing up, you hear like life coaches, transformative coaches,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. And like, that's a strange concept. Why would I need anyone to like help me with living my life? Well, I mean, if you wanted to learn a specific skill, say in
Yeah.
fitness or like work on your health, like a nutrition, you'd work with a nutritionist, you'd work with a
Mm-hmm.
trainer, of course. And then, I mean, there's, an infinite amount of things you can learn within life and an infinite amount of things to improve within the art of living. So it's the same thing, just applying to like things outside of things we more commonly known as people to be seeking guidance for. And yeah, my first introduction to coach, I was like a bit turned off by. I'm like, why would I ask this person why would I pay this person to give me this information? But it's so much more than I thought it was. And yeah, it was really helpful for me, like right off the bat, working with one of my buddies, Ryan Sprague, and he had different strategies and techniques in terms of creating more clarity, more self awareness, and things like that. And it just led to so many more opportunities for me. And then, of course, the accountability factor
Mm-hmm.
and things along these lines. And yeah, it can be quite the challenge to remain self accountable. And when you have like another mind in the mix that like knows like, oh, I agreed to do this thing with this person,
Yeah.
it's helpful in a lot of ways. So if anyone's on the fence about mentorship, it's like, these investments return tenfold most of the time. So it's
Mm-hmm.
it's usually a worthwhile endeavor.
Not to mention, I felt like it's sped up my progress. It's without the other person there, like me just handling it myself, I have my own bias that keeps me from doing things. So having a coach or the other person there to just reflect what I'm saying and have a really broken down conversation about what I'm actually saying, because sometimes words don't come out right. And so having somebody there to like dig a little bit deeper into what I was trying to figure out, I was actually heading in the wrong direction kind of thing.
Mhm.
So to have somebody else there to help you understand yourself, it's again kind of like therapy, and
Yeah,
goes
it's
back to
critical.
also like therapists need their own therapists. Like,
Hmm.
bless their souls.
I
That is
wouldn't trust a therapist that hasn't like sought out some sort of
oh man.
professional guidance from. I mean, there's just levels to the game of like
Mm-hmm.
understanding and knowing oneself, and there's people out there that are just they have done so much internal work that um yeah, it's interesting to work with people that see things in a much more truthful, clear way, and what that can result in terms of your own awareness and the nuggets and pearls you can derive from, simply people sharing words with you and reflections based off of, what's coming out of your own mind and you sharing with them. And yeah, I mean, it's a lot different than just communicating with a friend or asking for help from a friend. Sometimes maybe your friend's a coach, so maybe it's a little different there, but
again, I work on information gathering research basis, and then I make my own opinions following that. I like to see everybody's sides of things.
Yeah.
I consider myself very much an empath, so I can relate to a lot of different scenarios and very much a devil's advocate.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of value in having your friends that you console in and vice versa, but then also having professionals that you console in as well.
True that. What are you, okay, let's see where we want to go next here. What are you feeling most excited about in terms of your work currently? I know there's probably some things you can't fully disclose, like you were talking about before.
I think right now it's just being able to actually focus on my business. I think I've been just for so long just doing work for clients that now I'm at a point where like I'm starting to do really fun things that I've wanted to do for a while. Public speaking being one of them. I'm putting a lot of time and energy into that this year. And so I think I'm just really excited to like give people those light bulb moments.
Yeah.
Even in just like one-on-one conversations, most people, which I'm very gracious that they share their thoughts and feelings with me, but after I leave a lot of conversations with people, they'll just send me a text after and be like, that was like, I needed that.
Yeah.
And just to hear that is just so fulfilling for me.
True that. Yeah, that's just a transmission of love. It's just you sharing love, you're cultivating love, and you're spreading light, which is really cool. And that's definitely a mission I'm on, is to share information and practices and energy with people, and to help them come to that place of love within themselves and that positive energy and that hope and that connection, that interconnection. I would say that's my ultimate goal, is to like stoke the interconnection of myself and then share that with the world in the various ways I feel called to in terms of my creativity, whether it's art or, the holistic wellness workshops that we host, the podcasting, the conversations, because a lot of people are going through it, including myself. Life's a freaking wild journey, and we need people right now on the forefronts really delving deep into themselves, doing that healing work, and then through that finding the clarity to know what their gifts are, because we all have our unique fingerprint, and a lot of the times it just takes the right lifestyle design to really tap into what that like unique creative power is. And then from there, it's just connecting with the right people and taking the steps forward to share it with the world and to continue to develop it and stay connected in that space. So it's I know that's exactly what you're doing. It's really cool to see. And I love, like I said at the beginning of the episode, it's so fun and so powerful to see people from our small town Cedarburg just like sending it, just fully sending it.
I love it, especially like with this year being supposedly our 10-year anniversary.
Oh, I know, right?
Which is also crazy.
It is crazy. I'm excited. I'm going to go to the 10-year
reunion.
Anniversary. Our anniversary is coming up, guys.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this and we went to high school with, if you're in our class, we better see you there.
But there's something you said too about the right people. I think that was a big pivotal thing for me the last quarter, is just I didn't realize I was in the wrong rooms.
Yep.
For so long.
Yep.
And to now be with the right people and talking to the right people and realizing that I have the power to decline something that's not in alignment. Whoa.
New concept. No, I mean, shit, it's hard to not like coddle people. And like you said, you're an empathic person, so and empathetic, and you feel people. So like to set boundaries for like the greater good of everyone, which is ultimately the greater good of yourself. Usually that's challenging. So like to decline people, sometimes that's rejection. On their end, it means, whatever emotional process they have to go through. And it's challenging to say no. It's challenging
Yeah.
to say no.
But then to also realize the right people to say yes to. I think, again, just coming from a place of like doing so much work all the time and deciding, I think sometimes like I get a little like, I don't know what to do kind of
Yeah.
mode. But I think, yeah, within the last quarter, just realizing that it's funny as a marketer myself, like I was almost marketing to the wrong crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And so now that I'm very clear on my vision and my business and talking to the right people,
Yeah.
like I'm stoked.
Yeah, that's challenging. For me, it's been like I'm carving my path in wellness because that's what my heart truly wants, and that's what I most enjoy and gives me the most energy. And it's like, where am I going? Like, what exactly is my vision? And I know it's a malleable thing, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
continually shape shifting and things like that. And that's there's like I know there's a lot of different methods of ironing and defining what that is.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to like settle on something, and I feel like right now it's like I'm just like in an exploration phase, doing some field research and putting myself out there, pressing different buttons and stuff like that, and seeing what feels good, and slowly it's starting to come together. But yeah, it's like also very scary with me wanting to start to, well, which I am doing. It's scary to let go of who I was and move into who I am and
Mm-hmm.
who I know I am and who I want to become, with the transition from jewelry into wellness, which I love jewelry, and this is a conversation for another day. But just on the topic of vision and
Yeah.
figuring out where I'm going, that's a challenging process.
Oh, totally. I mean,
Yeah.
it's shedding an old identity.
Yeah, exactly.
I've gone through that a couple times now,
The snake
so
shedding its skin.
pretty much.
Yeah.
But
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's fun to embrace to connect to that energy, because we know what it is the next steps are. It's just, are we willing to let go, and are we willing to practice letting go and develop that skill of continuing to follow what is our joy, what is our bliss, what fully excites me. And then there's a lot more that goes into it. Obviously, like, you're a strategist and a consultant, so you guide people through these processes of like, what are the frameworks and the logisticals, and like what is like a actual structure we can utilize here to move into these things and do it in a way where you're not like burning yourself out and maintaining yourself as
yeah,
well.
but I mean, also it doesn't help for me to do any of that without the passion. So like what you're doing in terms of like testing things and experimenting, like that's, I would argue, the most important part. Because if you're not behind it, then what anything I'm going to help you figure out doesn't matter.
Yeah. And that's a great point. I had a opportunity to work with a consulting company in developing an online educational jewelry program, like full scale thing, where they, like, I pay them a large sum of money. They build out the whole thing. They ask me specific questions, stuff like that. It would have been hugely successful. It would have brought me a ton of money, but the passion wasn't there. And I had an experience that brought me to this realization where, like, I was on the cusp of saying yes to this thing, because I was like, well, it'll be great, and I'll make like a lot more money, and I will enjoy it.
Yeah.
But it's not, my heart isn't fully in it, and I recognize that. And I was like, hey man, that's what I realized last night. Like, sorry, I didn't say sorry. I was just like, this is where I'm at, and I really appreciate your time and everything you provided me and stuff like that. And so yeah, that was one thing that I forget exactly why I started talking about that.
Just the passion.
The passion, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And realizing my passion was somewhere else.
And that's okay, too.
It's
like,
good. It's good. It's very okay.
Everything, I feel like life is never a linear path. There's always forks in the road, and you get to choose your own adventure. So,
true.
Just because you said no to that, it's, who knows, maybe there's something way bigger and way
There
grander
is.
coming.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Because, yeah, it's just like, freedom to me is experiencing joy as much as possible, or at least that's part of it. And like doing things you love on a continual basis, doing things that make you happy, and that's one of the most critical aspects of, being healthy and enjoying life sustainably. So, yeah, that's why I followed that nudge from like my intuition to not carry out that opportunity and then open myself up to all the other possibilities that are within the realm of wellness, although it's very scary, and because
Oh, of course.
it's just a completely new journey. Like I'm preparing to, well, I'm in the journey. But like, yeah, there's so many new things to learn. There's so many new ways to put myself out there. So many ways for me to evolve and to be like a white belt again. That's, it's an intense process. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, it's very uncomfortable. I'm like a fish out of water in
Oh,
some
yeah.
sort of ways, but yeah, it's powerful because I get to show myself again what I'm made of and what I can do. And I've been through this process. So I know I'm capable. It's just, am I willing to commit on a daily basis? And, yeah, so that's been an interesting process for me.
You got it.
Hell yeah, thank you. So I would love for you to let the listeners know, anything you want to promote in terms of workshops or offerings, things along these lines, and then share the social media plugs and any last remaining words you'd like to share for everyone.
Yeah, so everyone can find me pretty much on any platform at The Design Blonde. I managed to, preserve that on everything, so that was great.
There you go. Oh, that's
Um,
surprising.
yes, and all of my offerings and stuff are mostly up to date on my website. They change from time to time just depending on kind of what I'm feeling or seasonally. But it's just thedesignblonde.com. Um, I love LinkedIn, which
Cool.
I know makes people cringe, but that's a really good place to reach out to me if you want to talk about anything. Yeah, workshop wise, available for hire. Same thing with some freelance work. I'm very selective on who I work with now, just based on the work that I want to do, which I think is very important for anyone listening. Make sure you're very clear on the work you want to do, but also the work you don't want to do. But yeah, I mean, we talked about a lot today, so I would love to, if anybody has any questions or further thoughts, they want to leave them in the comments, like happy to respond in the comments too.
Yeah. DMs are open too,
Yep.
as always, for connection support, inquisition of all sorts. So that being said, thank you all so much for tuning in and exploring with us and having fun and being curious. We will see you next time and love you all. Smooches.